Hey, good morning. I am live from New York City, where I was here for a panel last night on Sam Bankman-Fried. More on that in a moment. Let's start with the absolutely crazy image that is everywhere now. Let me just show it to you of Donald Trump standing seemingly frozen behind the Resolute desk as the people around him are coming to the aid of a guest, a White House guest, who fainted in the Oval Office. This is a photo taken by Andrew Harnick. Okay, of Getty Images. What I want to show you is I'm going to show you the whole video, but I want to show you first the photos leading up to that. So the first, I'm gonna share this one with you. This is one taken by a different photographer, and Andrew Caballero Reynolds. And what you can see in this first image is that Donald's leaning over. His hand is on, his right hand is kind of perched on the desk. His head is tipped forward, and he's staring down at the scene of this person fainting. He's not giving directions. He's just watching what unfolds. So again, guest faints, Donald Trump freezes. Then we see this. He's still standing there, kind of frozen, as the staff is telling the press to leave, obviously, so they can have privacy and take care of this man who is now lying on the floor and has fainted. And that's what leads us to a second photo by Andrew Harnick. By the way, this was Andrew Harnick too, and this is possibly one of the best photos that represents, I think Philip said it above before the show began, this is a metaphor for Donald Trump. Now let me show you the video, and I'm going to have a little bit more to say about this. So this is the video. It shows part of what went down here, and I think, okay, so what you're going to see here is there's some sort of press conference in the Oval Office. I think they were talking about the various weight loss drugs and how the administration is trying to get the cost down. I think who is speaking right now at the lectern might be, I'm not actually sure if it's an administration official, if it's one of the executives. We have someone standing at the lectern from facing him as we look to our right. You can see RFK Jr., the head of Health and Human Services. And then to our left, over this guy's right shoulder, you're going to see Mehmet Oz. And Dr. Oz is now the administrator for the Centers for Medicaid and Medicaid Services, which is obviously under RFK. Let's watch what happens here as this gentleman faints.
High-value jobs. But today you okay? Gordon, you okay? Yeah.
Press out. Press. We're going. Thank you, press. Press. Right, guys. Cameras. We're done. Cameras.
Let's watch that. I want you to watch that again, and I'm going to turn the volume off so we can watch it carefully. And you can see that RFK hits the road immediately. Okay, so the man is talking, and Dr. Oz actually comes to the rescue. He sees someone fading, and he grabs him. So he, as his knees buckle, he can ease him to the ground so he doesn't hit his head and further injure himself. So, okay. And shortly after this transpires is when we see this kind of incredible photo. While they're still helping this man, Donald is standing straight ahead with this weird look on his face. His arms are down. He looks unhappy, and he's staring off into the distance. Confused, dementia. He's standing still, hoping maybe that people focus on him. If he turns his attention away, maybe, and not on the man on the ground. By then, the press is being ushered out. It's really weird that this happened. I don't understand how, if someone in your office collapsed, you would be staring off into space. But what I will say is that's kind of how Donald Trump's whole attitude is. He doesn't care about anyone but himself. And he is probably frustrated that his press conference has been interrupted. He really seems that way. Now, one thing we do know is after that, when it continued, I think this is after that, because I think they did return. It could have been before, I'm not sure, but you hear what he has to say about the pharma industry when it appears that someone from one of the pharma companies had just fainted.
Novartis is in the middle of a potential $10 billion acquisition for a smaller obesity biotech. They might need your and the FTC's help to see that through. Do you have any issues with that, or Eli Lilly buying a smaller obesity biotech from an anti-competitive
Well, I don't
standpoint?
know. Do you want to talk about that? I mean, I'd like to hear it. Maybe you should give us a piece of the company, like I've been asking for.
So
Give the United States a nice big chunk of the company.
so no one.
Okay. It appears by how many heads I count, this was after someone faded, I think. You should give us a piece of the company if you want to get FDA approval. Really? This is the same person who is calling Zoran Mandami a communist, and this is a guy who's shaking down industry to say, this government's going to give you approval, you better give the government a piece of the company. Now, before we kind of leave this, I got two things to say. One, I do remember a story from years ago about, and I think it's been repeated before, that Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago, there was once a guest who fainted, and the guest fainted or slipped on a marble floor, and I believe hit his head. And he was not, just similar to this. I mean, this is who the man is. Instead of being, he told the story apparently to Howard Stern. This is something I remember, and I'm going to share you a clip because I want to look it up. He shared with Howard Stern, maybe on his radio program, or his satellite radio program, if that was as late as it was. He shared that it disgusted him that this man had hit his head and was bleeding on his marble. Okay, let me share that with you. Oops, I thought I was doing my sharing. Give me a second. And oops, guys, I got this. I got it. I swear. Okay, here we go. Okay. And I'm going to get this for you. You're going to appreciate this to see he has not changed. He has only gotten worse. People don't tend to get better when they get dementia and they feel like their power is slipping when they are a malignant narcissist sociopath. I'm not a doctor, but I'm going to call Donald Trump that because I'm a citizen and I'm allowed to. That's how he appears to me to be. Okay, let's look. Here we go. And let's play it.
D'Antonio, he's the author. Let's bring in now senior contributor Michael D'Antonio. He's the author of The Truth About Trump. Michael, thank you very much for coming in.
This is from
First
2018.
Off, what's your reaction to the president saying he would run in without a weapon? He was there.
Oh, I'm sure he would. What would he get, 10 feet before he had to stop and catch his breath? This is a 71-year-old man who had 4 deferments when he could have served in the Vietnam War with a gun in his hand, but instead he chose not to. So this idea that this is a physically courageous man who would be committed to risking life and limb, I think is laughable. But yet he'll stand up and do this and assume that his base is going to applaud him. And it's no different than the guy at the end of the bar saying this kind of thing.
So if past actions may be some indication of how one would react in certain circumstances or similar circumstances. So I want to play this now. This is Donald Trump on the Howard Stern show in 2008, about the time an elderly man fell off the stage in front of him at a charity event at Mar-a-Lago.
So you have all these really rich people, and a man, about 80 years old, very wealthy man, a lot of people didn't like him, he fell off the stage. So what happens is this guy falls off right on his face, hits his head, and I thought he died. And you know what I did? I said, oh, my God, that's disgusting, and I turned away. I couldn't, you know, he was right in front of me. I turned away. I didn't want to touch him. No, the Marines, he's bleeding all over the place. I felt terribly. You know, beautiful marble floor, didn't look so good. It changed color. It became very red. And you have this poor guy, 80 years old, laying on the floor, unconscious. And all of the rich people are turning away. Oh, my God, this is terrible. This is disgusting. And, you know, they're turning away. Nobody wants to help the guy. His wife is screaming. She's sitting right next to him. She's screaming. What happens is, these 10 Marines from the back of the room, they were so far back, you know, it's a huge ballroom. They come running forward. They grab them. They put the blood all over the place. It's all over their uniforms. They're taking it, they swipe. They ran them out. They created a stretcher. They call it a human stretcher, where they put their arms out, like 5 guys at each side. They ran them out. I never saw it. They ran like...
You would never do that.
I was saying, get that blood cleaned up. It's disgusting.
I would say, get that blood cleaned up. It's disgusting. He said, I turned away. He said, everybody turned away. I don't think everyone turned away. I don't think it was just the Marines. I think if he's turned away, he doesn't see what's happening. Probably there are people around this man. And this is who Donald is. I've never forgotten that. And I'm so glad that Don Lemon back in 2018 brought it up. So that happened in 2008. The man has not changed. And his priority, as he said, is he's thinking about the blood staining his marble. This is who he is. Now, let's get real here and talk about some practical things. It's not every day that I would show you a clip from Mehmet Oz, but he was there and he did the right thing. And I want to share with you his advice about if you see someone fainting, what you should do. I don't know if you've ever fainted. I have, and thank God some of these things are close calls. And luckily I didn't hit my head somewhere, you know, so I think that, I think you should know this. Let's play it.
By the way, how is the gentleman that unfortunately, I saw you rush to him in the Oval Office. I was watching the press. Is he okay?
He's doing much better. I actually just corresponded with him, so he's doing okay. One little tip, by the way, is that, you know, just a community act. If you see someone whose knees are beginning to buckle and their eyes are going back, don't watch what happens. These folks will actually get hurt worse by the fall than by dealing with what underlying condition may have been, you know, low blood sugar, et cetera. So if you just give the person a bear hug, even if you don't know them, guide them to the floor gently, put them, and then lift their legs up to get their blood pressure up. That's, you know, you don't have to go to medical school to learn that, but I'm sure, just in case you didn't hear that before.
Dr. Oz, thank you as always.
Really, guys, let's use this bizarre, insensitive moment to be prepared. You know, every day, anywhere between 1,500 and around 3,000 people watch this show. And if you're someone watching it right now, either live or on replay, and you tell, you know, a few friends today and tell them to tell someone, this kind of information can spread. Please do the right thing and think about if you see someone, you know, what he said, you know, the bear hug, helping them to the ground and getting those legs up so the blood can start flowing back up to the heart and to the brain or whatever. I'm not a doctor. Is Dr. Oz even a doctor? I don't know. Maybe he has a PhD. I don't care if he's a medical doctor or not. That was really, really good advice. Now, I'm going to turn to a couple more things. Most importantly, we're going to get to the Supreme Court argument on Wednesday, because I didn't have the show yesterday, and I want to talk to you about that. But I want to talk to you a little bit more about some other good news, which was the sandwich guy, right? The guy who, Mr. Sandwich, or the Subway sandwich guy, was acquitted yesterday. And it's kind of amazing. So this man was Sean Dunn. And as you remember, this is someone who he was charged after he threw a sandwich at a federal agent. Now, what's really important is you might remember that they were not able to, the Department of Justice, when the prosecutors asked the grand jury to indict Sean Dunn, the sandwich guy, on federal felony charges, the grand jury balked. And we all laughed at that because there's this famous saying in the law that a grand jury is essentially so in the tank for the prosecution. The prosecution only presents one side of evidence, right? That a grand jury will indict a ham sandwich. that has been an expression for ages. And I think it's kind of funny because it's kind of like a ham sandwich isn't kosher or whatever. So that's the joke. Well, the thing is, this grand jury would not indict a man who threw a salami sandwich. However, Jeanine Pirro decided, let's go with misdemeanor charges, because a misdemeanor is still a crime, but you don't need for a federal misdemeanor charge, you don't need to have a grand jury bless it. So the trial in the misdemeanor case against Sean Dunn, the sandwich guy, so funny. They deliberated for a few hours, and basically they found him not guilty. And part of what's super funny here is in the testimony, this federal agent was just full of shit, basically. He had testified, the sandwich exploded all over my chest. And he said he could smell mustards and onion. However, when the lawyer for Sandwich Guy asked him to look at the photo after Sean Dunn throws the sandwich at his vest, or at his, he's got a bulletproof vest under his uniform, it's on the ground intact in that kind of wax wrap with maybe a little bit opened at the bottom. Also, what was unhelpful is when Sean Dunn's lawyer cross-examined this officer who said, were you really, assaulted? I mean, she mentioned that he had received gag gifts from his colleagues. One was a plush sandwich. And he also has a patch that he wears featuring a cartoon drawing of Sean Dunn, sandwich guy, throwing the sandwich, and it has the words felony footlong. So I will say that, it didn't work. And so, for old time's sake, I would like to share with you Jeanine Pirro, when she thought she had a case, what she had to say, because she lost. And now we all know, I'm not encouraging you to throw sandwiches at people, but at least we know that as long as a sandwich doesn't explode and the guy's wearing a bulletproof vest, maybe you're okay. I'm not encouraging it. I don't think people should waste food. I'm not into food fights. I think it degrades the people who put together meals. I think it's a waste of an important resource where people are starving in the world. So no sandwich throwing for those reasons. But I'm just telling you, not illegal. Okay, let's play Jeanine Pirro when she thought she had the slam dunk case.
A Subway sandwich about this big and took it and threw it at the officer. He thought it was funny. Well, he doesn't think it's funny today because we charged him with a felony, assault on a police officer, and we're going to back the police to the hilt. So there, stick your Subway sandwich somewhere else.
I love that song. Yeah, they don't back police to the hilt. Donald Trump pardoned over 1,500 people who were engaged in a violent effort to overthrow a lawful election at the U.S. Capitol. People who, as you know, were squeezing police officers between doors that were smashing them, who are throwing objects at police officers. Come on. They don't actually back the police. Okay. Two more things before I get to the really important tariff case. As you know, Donald Trump has decided to give $40 billion to help Argentina, help bail out Argentina. And it also helped Milei win the election. And this is someone who supposedly was a libertarian, but I guess he's got to reach out to us, not his government, but to our government to shore up his supposedly libertarian policies that government is bad. Why the hell are we bailing out Argentina? But meanwhile, $40 billion to Argentina. But Donald Trump, despite the fact that a federal judge, several federal judges, but most recently a federal judge says you have to fund SNAP fully, even if there is a shutdown, because there's actually a fund for emergencies, he's refusing to do it. And let me tell you, SNAP, this is Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, I think is what it stands for. SNAP only costs, it's a big chunk of money, but it's important. It costs $8 billion a month. If you can do the math, I think, what would that be? 8 times 5 is 40. They could fund SNAP for 5 months, 5 months for what they gave to Argentina after just like this in a few days, 20 and then 20. So really, you want to have people go hungry in America? And so let's listen to what Donald Trump had to say about that.
One other thing, our country has to remain very liquid because problems, catastrophes, wars, could be anything. We have to remain liquid. We can't give everything away based on a number. Here's an example. When I was president, the number that you're talking about was a tiny fraction of what it is now. Biden went totally crazy, gave it to anybody that would ask, gave it to people that were able-bodied, had no problem. Anybody that would ask, we get the number. And it's many times the number of people are on. This wasn't meant for that.
Yeah. Do you know why able-bodied working people are getting SNAP? It's because the economy sucks for them. It's because federal minimum wage has not gone up. A lot of states are not increasing the minimum wage. And let's see, what the federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. Let's see what it was last increased. It was increased in 2009 to $7.25 an hour in 2009. And I think in 2007 it's $5.85 at any rate. That does not obviously account for inflation. So if you're talking about $7.25 an hour, with not guaranteed, you're absolutely not guaranteed 40 hours a week working, but that's about less than $15,000 a year. And that is going to put you below the poverty level. So the poverty level in 2025, obviously it varies for federal purposes. It's going to vary depending upon how many people you have in your family. But if you the poverty level is right pretty much there. So I do think that, what is it for an individual, the poverty threshold is $15,650. So the minimum wage, $7.25, if you work a 40-hour work week and get maybe that's roughly just under the poverty level. And I'm trying to understand why Donald Trump can't understand that, other than the fact that he is innumerate, selfish, and stupid. So yeah, able-bodied people who are working actually get it. And the people who are out of work, laid off, who obviously need this too, and children and so on. Now, there was a further question about SNAP funding. Let's go. Oh, let me just add, we need to stay liquid in case we have wars and catastrophes. Let me just say, Congress allocated the funds for SNAP. Even though there's a shutdown, Congress has also allocated emergency funding for SNAP. It's not your choice to suddenly take over the power of the purse, Donald. Okay, so let's ask. There was one more question about SNAP funding that I want to share with you. Here we go.
Judge said,
sorry guys, I think there is someone vacuuming the room next door to me right now. And if you hear like loud noises, that's what it is. Okay, let's look more at the SNAP funding. You have a journalist asking Donald Trump about this.
a federal judge said tonight that the administration has to fully fund SNAP. It's the latest in the back and forth, and the Justice Department said they're going to appeal it. What's your message to folks as they work this out in the courts and in Congress as we're heading into Thanksgiving?
You want to go with that?
Yeah, look, Jackie, it's an absurd ruling because you have a federal judge effectively telling us what we have to do in the midst of a Democrat government shutdown.
So he got his talking point in, blaming the Democrats for the shutdown, when we already know that all it takes is Thune to get rid of the filibuster. We also know that Donald Trump thinks, and he's right, that the election in part was a referendum on the shutdown, that people aren't happy about that, and they're blaming the Republicans. And third of all, J.D. Vance went to law school, and he understands separation of powers, and it is a check on the executive branch for a federal judge to look at the statutes and Constitution sometimes, depending, and decide, be the decider, be the final say on interpreting the language. And the executive that is violating the law can't get away with that. Now, I know that you might think, well, Jen, didn't the Supreme Court say that? And Trump versus United States, that he can break any law and not be charged after he's out of office. That's a case about criminal law and whether you can go after an ex-president. What I'm talking about is the executive branch, and I'm talking about violations of law that don't involve personal, individual criminal penalty. This is about federal judges saying, this is not, this is an obligation and you must live up to your obligation. Now, one more thing. This is leading into the tariff case. Donald Trump, when he was asked about about the oral argument in the tariff case, challenging the tariffs that he put on beginning in February, that were sort of across various nations, that he claimed he had the authority from Congress to do under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEPA. So he's asked about that. And I think one thing you should remember is that ever since Donald Trump has been talking about tariffs, normal people who know anything understand that a tariff is just a word that means an import tax. That's what it means. And that's what a tariff is. It's a tax on imports. If you look at any dictionary, like I'm just looking at tariff, I'm looking at from Oxford. This is coming up on my Google. Tariff, a tax or duty paid on a particular class of imports. If you look at Wikipedia, a tariff or import tax is a duty imposed by the national government, etc. Tariff, you have this Merriam-Webster, a schedule of duties imposed by government on imports, a duty or rate on a schedule of rates, a price, a charge. So it is a tax, and it is a tax paid by the business that is importing goods from a designated country at the rate that, so if I'm importing something, as you know, from another country, let's say I'm importing something from Canada, and I'm going to be importing, I don't mean as an individual purchaser, but I am someone who owns a store and I sell Canadian maple syrup, let's say. I shouldn't use a specific product because I don't want to mess you up, but I'm importing something from Canada. I am going to have to, at the border, pay this tax, this import duty, and this tariff, right? I'm paying this tax. And it's my choice to eat that cost or pass it along to consumers. And I'm going to try to pass it along to consumers because I need to make money, right? So if I'm paying $10,000 for goods and there's a 50% tariff, that's an additional $5,000 all of a sudden across the things that I'm purchasing. And I'm probably going to want to mark up the goods to make up for that, right? This is just a factor. Some places, if there's 100% tariff suggested, then I'm going to be paying $20,000. So ultimately, we know for a fact that the business pays the tax and then will pass it on to the consumer. Well, Donald Trump and his Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, keep saying it's not a tax. Donald Trump says we're getting money from these other countries. And Bessent says, well, we don't know who pays the tariff. So Trump is trying to claim it's a tariff on the country and they're giving us money. Well, the person giving you the money is the importer. Bessent gets a little more nuanced. And his argument is, well, remember I just told you I was going to pay $10,000 for those goods, and now I have a $5,000 tariff, and then I'm going to pass all or some of that on to the consumer. What Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, has said is that that person over in Canada will, go, oh, well, I know your taxes are going to be really high. We've got a 50% tax. So instead of charging you $10,000 for all of this, I'll just charge you $8,000. I'll eat some of it. And if I charge you $8,000, now your tax will be $4,000. So now you're paying $12,000. Okay. I'm still in a position where I'm going to have to still mark things up. So, and there's no evidence, by the way, that these foreign businesses are doing that. And we have seen prices go up. So now I want you to see, so Donald Trump has never admitted that consumer prices go up with tariffs. It's a fact that it happens. It has happened historically. There was a theory when America was a younger country and we're building up our manufacturing that if tariffs were high enough, then the goods wouldn't even come in and we could sell internally and make things internally. That's an argument that was made. It's a little complicated because raw materials sometimes have to go in here to make goods, but that was an argument that was made and to help build up businesses. But that's not what Donald Trump is saying. He's not saying no goods are coming in. He's saying we're making trillions of dollars from foreign countries. Well, no, the tax, again, is largely paid by U.S. businesses and passed along to consumers. Okay, well, the tax is only paid by U.S. businesses. Whether the foreign companies discount is not about who pays the tax. The tax is 100% of the duties, 100% of these tariffs, what we call import taxes, 100% of them are paid by the business importing the goods, period. And then a good chunk of that gets passed to the consumer. Okay, so finally, as I said, Trump has never admitted that until yesterday. Maybe it's because he was tired, but he fucking admitted it.
Agree then that Americans are paying those tariffs?
I think, no, I don't agree. I think that they might be paying something, but when you take the overall impact, the Americans are gaining tremendously. They're gaining through national security. Look, I'm ending war because of these tariffs.
They might be paying something, but they're benefiting because I'm ending a war because of these tariffs. He is like totally Looney Tunes, guys. Okay. So now, before we get to Crazy Town, we have an opportunity now to talk about the tariff case. Long story made short, he's going to lose. The tariffs will be struck down. There are enough votes to do that. I think there are at least 6 votes, at least maybe 7. I think at least 6 votes to strike down his tariffs. And the question is not going to be whether he loses. The question is going to be whether all 6 justices will agree on the reasoning. So again, he will lose the case. There will be a majority decision saying, this is my prediction, saying these tariffs don't work legally, right? And then it's possible there might be separate concurrences. It's possible that John Roberts and 2 conservative justices have one theory, like the major questions doctrine. I don't want to get into those weeds. And then maybe the 3 liberal justices who sign on to this might have a different reasoning. I'm not sure. I don't know who's going to write the decision. Can't predict for sure, but I would be shocked if he ends up winning this case. And so what I want to share with you is some clips from the oral argument, and it's really kind of good because I'm going to share from the Supreme Court's website where you can actually see how this works. So let me share my screen. Okay, I think you can see this. This is okay. So what you're looking at is learning resources versus Trump. And I'm going to give you a link in case you want this for later. I'm giving this to you in the chat. And this is we're going to go through excerpts. I'm going to play some of this for you. And what you're going to see is when the different justices speak, you'll know who's actually talking. Bear with me on this. You'll see it's going to work. And so the question before the court is whether IEPA, this International Economic Emergencies Powers Act, they didn't use the full name correctly, IEPA, authorizes the president to impose tariffs. And you remember that Learning Resources and Hand to Mind are family-owned businesses that design and distribute educational products for children, I'm just reading you this summary here, and that beginning in 2025, through a series of Donald Trump's executive orders, they started having a 20% trafficking tariff and additional so-called reciprocal tariff. And as a result of these tariffs on Chinese goods, they were paying over 145%. So for every $100, to keep it simple, we're talking about they would have to pay a tariff of $145. So they filed this lawsuit in April of 2025, and here we are at the United States Supreme Court. So let me start playing this for you. I think you're going to enjoy this. Don't worry, we're not watching the whole thing, which is quite long. I think it might even be 2 hours long. I'm going to give you some excerpts from Donald Trump's lawyer and then from Neil Katyal, who was arguing for the businesses.
This morning in case 24-1287, Learning Resources versus Trump, and the consolidated case. General Sauer.
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the court.
Sorry.
On April 2nd, President Trump determined that our exploding trade deficits had brought us to the brink of an economic and national security catastrophe. He further pronounced that the traffic of fentanyl and other opioids into our country has created a public health crisis, taking hundreds of thousands of American lives. President Trump has declared that these emergencies are country-killing and not sustainable, that they threaten the bedrock of our national and economic security, and that fixing them will make America a strong, financially viable, and respected country again. Due to IEPA tariffs, President Trump has negotiated agreements worth trillions of dollars with major trading partners, including most recently China. Unwinding those agreements, he warns, would expose us to ruthless trade retaliation by far more aggressive countries and drive America from strength to failure with ruinous economic and national security consequences. In Dames and Moore against Regan, this court held that IEPA's sweeping and unqualified language grants the president's actions the strongest presumption of validity and the widest latitude of judicial interpretation. Yet plaintiffs argue that tariffs, IEPA's least blunt and most nimble tool, are virtually the only tool that Congress did not grant the president to deal with foreign emergencies. That is wrong. The phrase regulate importation plainly embraces tariffs, which are among the most traditional and direct methods of regulating importation. And plaintiffs concede that IEPA authorizes quotas and other tariff equivalents. The major questions doctrine does not apply here. IEPA confers major powers to address major problems on the president, who is perhaps the most major actor in the realm of foreign affairs. And the non-delegation doctrine casts no doubt on IEPA because Congress may assign the president broad authority regarding the conduct of foreign affairs, where he enjoys his own inherent Article II powers. I welcome the court's questions.
Let me translate that for a moment. What he's trying to say is, when Donald Trump is imposing these tariffs, it's about regulating, it's about his foreign policy and other regulatory responsibilities to keep the nation safe and so on. And that is why he's allowed to do this, essentially. Now, he's welcoming questions, and this is when you're going to see why he's losing.
Spend a few minutes on why exactly the major question doctrine doesn't apply to the president in this case.
Yes, Justice Thomas, and I'd maybe make 2 or 3 points on that front. First of all, though the major questions doctrine may apply to the president in other contexts, specifically in the foreign affairs context where he has his own inherent Article II authority, it's a particularly poor fit to apply the major questions doctrine, and that's for at least 2 reasons. First of all, just as a matter of kind of common sense interpretation, one would expect Congress to confer major powers on the president to address major...
Okay. Let me tell you what I want to skip over this because this is the boring part. The major questions doctrine is something that has been pushed by conservatives, and now Don Sauer doesn't want it applied to the president. So the major question doctrine says that when Congress passes a statute, such as an enabling statute that sets up an agency, whether it's the Food and Drug Administration or the Securities and Exchange Commission or the Federal Trade Commission or the whatever, you can imagine all these agencies, that the Congress can set up these agencies, but there are certain powers that Congress cannot delegate to the executive branch, cannot delegate. So even if Congress says you are entitled to make a rule that does X, Y, and Z, that tells consumers to do this or tells businesses to do that, under the so-called major questions doctrine, those rules can be struck down because they can determine if the court, makes this determination that it should not be delegated to Congress, delegated by Congress, if there is not a specifically clear authorization. So if it's too vague, if the statute is too vague, then no, the agency can't do it. And so what Clarence Thomas is asking here of Donald Trump's lawyer, Solicitor General Sauer, what he's asking of Donald Trump's lawyer is, what is your argument for people who are saying this doesn't work because IEEPA nowhere says you can impose tariffs. So what they're getting at is, hey, this IEEPA statute talks about sanctioning countries, but it doesn't talk about imposing tariffs in economic emergencies. So therefore, what the hell are you thinking, dude? We've been trying to push this major question doctrine for years. So this is why out of the gate, Thomas is asking about that. Now, I want to move a little bit forward, and I want to get to Justice Kagan on this real quick.
And I want to let you get to that. But just on that first reason, it seemed to depend a lot on the president's inherent Article II powers. And I'm wondering which powers you're speaking of there, because tariffs, one would naturally think, is are the power to impose taxes, the power to regulate foreign commerce. These are not things that are thought of as Article II powers. They are quintessential Article I powers. So what kind of Article II powers are you relying on?
So what Kagan is now asking about is Solicitor General John Sauer is saying, hey, there are these inherent powers under Article II for the president that allow him to do this. So, that's why the major questions doctrine doesn't apply. And Kagan's like, yeah, could you be explicit? I hope these translating this helps, because otherwise I think, if I were listening to this and I weren't a lawyer, I might be lost. Okay, let's continue.
When you gave the answer about major questions to Justice Thomas.
I would refer to what the court said, for example, on Egan, Department of Navy against Egan. That's a generally accepted view that the president has broad authority in the foreign.
Okay, so I'm going to skip over this, and I'm going to now.
Or to tax. It's the power to.
We're going to be into this. He's talking about it's this power to regulate. And I'm going to tell you, they don't buy this. I'm going to go past. Justice Roberts doesn't buy that argument. But let me go to some of the next. Let's look at the Justice Sotomayor.
Looking at this through the lens of Justice Jackson's opinion in Youngstown in the court.
Okay, I'm going to get to, here we go.
Congressional power, not a presidential power to tax. And you want to say tariffs are not taxes, but that's exactly what they are. They're generating money from American citizens, revenue. And you say it's incidental to the regulatory purpose. But I don't see how a quota is equivalent to revenue raising. A quota sets a limit to what you can import in, but it doesn't generate revenue. I don't understand this argument, that it's equivalent, or that foreign powers or even an emergency can do away with the major questions doctrine Didn't we in the Biden case recently say an emergency can't make clear what's ambiguous?
As to that point, I believe the court has never applied the major questions doctrine in the foreign policy context.
But we
That's
have,
the emergency context, not the foreign policy
counsel,
context.
we have never applied it to foreign affairs, but this is a tariff. This is a tax.
It is a, if I may, it's a foreign-facing regulation of foreign commerce. That's a regulatory tariff
Commerce,
distinct from a
everything.
tax.
So Biden could have declared a national emergency in global warming and then gotten his student forgiveness to not be a major questions doctrine?
I don't think he could have gotten student.
This is kind of flippin' brilliant. What she was just saying is, oh, can you just declare any kind of emergency? And then he could have gotten his student loans forgiven. Remember that? And let's listen what his response is.
Loan forgiveness.
Why?
But
It's
perhaps he could
global.
have.
It's foreign facing. We need all of these things to face to tax fossil fuel or to do something else. That's all Biden would have had to do with any of his programs.
What she's trying to say is the argument Sauer is making that this has to do with the war on drugs is tenuous at best. And so she's trying to say the same. Why wouldn't Biden be able to do that? Okay, let's continue.
If I may.
Is just declare some foreign-facing purpose?
If I may, maybe I can articulate it this way. The power to impose tariffs is a core application of the power to regulate foreign commerce, which is what the phrase regulate importation in IEPA naturally evokes.
Why
Not the power to tax.
Could you tell me why it is that when Congress intended to permit a president to regulate by imposing tariffs, it's always used tariff and regulate? I have about 16 laws in the past that when Congress intended regulate to mean taxing, that it used taxes simultaneously. But it didn't here.
Respectfully, this court came to the opposite conclusion, if I may, in Algonquin, where the phrase was not include.
Well, but that was, we did something in Algonquin.
Okay, so I'm going to move forward. He's, Sotomayor is not buying it. Now let's look at Justice Jackson.
Not bound to use that particular formulation once it conferred this power.
Let me ask you about the premise of your argument, which you sort of started at the beginning saying that one would expect for Congress to give the president a broad leeway in this kind of foreign affairs context. And I guess I'm wondering whether you also don't have to contend with the actual purpose of IEPA in making this argument, because as I understand it, that the IEPA was designed and intended to limit presidential authority, that Congress was concerned about how presidents had been using the authority under the predecessor's statute, TWIA, and it's pretty clear that Congress was trying to constrain the emergency powers of the president in IEPA. So it seems a little inconsistent to say that we have to interpret a statute that was designed to constrain presidential authority, consistent with an understanding that Congress wanted the president to have essentially unlimited authority.
I disagree with that, because what Congress actually did as...
What part do you disagree with? I'm sorry.
Well, I disagree with the notion that they were trying to constrain the breadth of the actions the president may take when it comes to this particularly narrow domain, which is, various regulations of trade.
Okay, so I'm going to, as you can see, this is a very sophisticated, intricate argument and question. Two things. I'm running the show to 10:15. If you need to leave at 10, that's fine, but I want to make sure you can kind of see important parts of this. And also, what is Justice Jackson getting here? She is saying we should really be reading this IEPA statute very narrowly because it was designed to restrain presidential power in terms of an emergency, to limit what the president could do. And Sauer doesn't agree with that, and she's arguing with him on that point. Now let's get to
something like that in Proclamation 4074, and I think the understanding is he didn't.
Let's get to. I think we can get to. Well, there's Kavanaugh. He's probably maybe going to be in the dissent. I want to get back to. Let's get to Justice Barrett.
Of the phrase regulate importation being understood.
Hold on, let me go. And basically what you're going to see is a theme here is they all know it's a tax. That's the premise here. This is a tax. Let's play it.
Of the phrase regulate importation being understood to include tariff authority. So my question is.
Okay, so there's language in the statute that allows to regulate importation. He's claiming regulate importation includes imposing taxes. They believe historically regulated importation is imposing sanctions on a country such that they cannot export anything, right? This is very different. When we're at war with Iraq and we say no one can do business with Iraq, they can't export into the United States. That is an outright ban on trade. And that does hurt the country. In contrast, a tariff is a tax on imports, which maybe indirectly hurts the company because it makes their country, because it maybe makes their goods more expensive. When I go into a store, if what I want to buy comes from, someone wants to buy the thing I imported from Canada and it's more expensive than something homegrown in the US, maybe I don't have as many sales. But the reality is that is not, what Ian Barrett's getting at is that's not regulating importation, that's taxing importation. And she sees it as different. Okay, let's listen to that.
Has there ever been another instance in which a statute has used that language to confer the power?
Well,
putting aside Yoshida.
Obviously, other statutory example is just imports. The cases we rely on are cases where, for example, in Gibbons, it's Ogden and Justice Story's.
But that just shows the word can be used that way. None of those cases talked about it as conferring tariff authority. I understood you to be citing McGoldrick and Gibbons in those cases just to show that it's possible to say that regulating commerce includes the power to tariff.
I think our argument goes a bit further than that as an interpretive matter, because if you look at that history, the history of delegation.
Could you just answer the justice's question?
Can you identify any statute that used that phrase to confer tariff?
Yeah, the only two statutes I can identify now are TWIA, as interpreted in Yoshida, and then closely related, not regulate importation, but adjust imports in Section 232.
Well, I think adjust imports is differently. So the answer is the contested application in TWIA, and then now in IEPA.
And then, of course,
So what's happening here is they're like, you have basically no authority at all. Okay. Next thing, she's Justice Barrett. This is why I know, if you're wondering why I'm thinking he's going to lose, is because I know Justice Barrett is against him. You can just see it here. I think we have Kagan. I think we have Sotomayor. I think we have Jackson. I think we have Barrett. And elsewhere, it's clear that it seems clear they have the chief, John Roberts. That gets us to 5. And they might even have Gorsuch. That gets us to 6. Okay, let's continue and listen to this. And I'm going to shortly, I'm going to continue this, and I'm going to switch over for you guys so you can hear the other side as well. But let's play this. Let's play Justice Barrett pushing back.
You've referred to the other verbs in IEPA as capacious. Would you really describe them as capacious? Because to me, things like nullify.
As you know, the capacious means roomy, spacious, so that the word could encompass many meanings, and she doesn't think so.
Nullify and void have definite meanings. I agree with you that regulate is a broader term, but those words I think are powerful. They pack a punch, but I wouldn't describe them as capacious in the sense that they have a wide range of meanings. So can you describe what you mean by capacious?
Let me put it this way. You look at all.
Okay, and so, he tries to go through and convince her that she is not convinced. And then Kagan gets into the statutory interpretation. This is a lot of what law is. Probably this decision is going to be rife with those kinds of things. Now let's listen.
Look at all the tariff statutes that
So this is the big, I think I can get you right to, I want to get you right to Kagan here. The key thing here comes down to, what does the word regulate mean? At least this is what we're focused on now. Does the word regulate include the power to tax or not? This is what it comes down to in this part of their debate. Let's play that.
Where regulate, used just as regulate, includes taxing power?
We don't assert that. We say it includes tariffing power when it's combined with importation, and that's just the most natural.
Right, because the natural understanding of regulate, even though in fact we can regulate through taxes, but when the code uses regulate, we don't typically understand it to refer to duties or taxes or tariffs or anything of the kind. And then if you look at the flip side of this and you look at all the tariff statutes that Congress has passed, I mean, they use.
So this is, they're going to go on and on about this. This is why the argument is so long. And, Sotomayor is going to, what side she's going to be on. I want to share with you the chief, because I think, again, we know where the liberals, I can tell you where they're coming out on this. But let's hear the chief.
Tariffs and other provisions.
Sorry, why I think.
But not here.
Sorry, why I think. Well, let me skip over this. He's basically against Sauer here too. Let me see if I can get to any of maybe to Gorsuch at some point. Let's get to Barrett.
We discussed the phrase adjust imports. And they said, the natural way to do that is to tariff them. And they specifically said it makes no sense at all to authorize quotas, which was conceded that.
Okay, this is going to go on and on and on. I want to find one of the conservatives. Okay, so this goes, you can see they're going to just kind of get into the weeds about this debate as to whether regulate includes that. Now, they get into the major questions doctrine. I'm skipping over this. You can always listen to this whole argument if you want. Let's go to, I might just move right to, I think we're getting to Gorsuch. So this could be good. Let me just go back. And why I think he's going to be, he is going to be the 6th vote. Okay, hold on one second. I want us to get where he's starting. Okay, here we go. This is Gorsuch. I'm having trouble loading it. Are you guys still there? It doesn't want to load on me. Boop. I think I got it. One sec. Okay, let's go.
Eligible principle test or something more with more bite than that. You're saying it's something less. Well, what is that less?
I think what the court has said in its opinions is just that it applies with much less force, more limited.
Sorry, he's getting into the major questions doctrine right here. Okay, here we go.
The president imposed a 50% tariff on gas-powered cars and auto parts to deal with the unusual and extraordinary threat from abroad of climate change.
Okay, this is such a good question. Again, could the president impose a 50% tariff, or meaning a tax, on gas-powered cars and auto parts from other countries to deal with the unusual and extraordinary threat from abroad of climate change? And Sauer says it's very likely that could be done, very likely. So let's listen to this.
It's very likely that could be done. Very likely.
I think that has to be the logic of your view.
Yeah, in other words, obviously this administration would say that's a hoax, it's not a real crisis, but...
I'm sure you would.
Yes, but...
Holy shit. So Sauer is saying, yeah, that's the logic, but we would think it's a hoax. And Gorsuch, that's so biting. I'm sure you would.
That'd be a question for Congress under our interpretation, not for the courts.
All right. And then on this inherent authority idea, I understand the president's inherent authority in wartime, and a lot of your examples of regulating commerce, and maybe your best one, Hamilton, during the Civil War, they occurred during wartime when the president's commander-in-chief power is clearly in play. Does the president have inherent authority over tariffs in peacetime?
No, we do not contend that.
Okay.
And in fact, I'd cite that.
Okay, so he's trying to now back off, saying, well, the president has inherent authority, but he's not trying to say it's as broad as tariffs in peacetime. Okay, and he's talking, this gets really, I want to skip over this because you can see how this is going here. I'm going to now, I think I'm going to get to, hold on one second.
Instructions, licenses, or otherwise.
So, I mean, Barrett is just going after him saying, I just don't believe you. I want to get to the beginning of Neil Kottjel's argument. At the end, Sauer's going to get a few minutes of rebuttal. We can watch that, but let's start with Neil.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the court. Tariffs are taxes. They take dollars from Americans' pockets and deposit them in the U.S. Treasury. Our founders gave that taxing power to Congress alone. Yet here the president bypassed Congress and imposed one of the largest tax increases in our lifetimes. Many doctrines explain why this is illegal, like the presumption that Congress speaks clearly when it imposes taxes and duties, and the major questions doctrine. But it comes down to common sense. It's simply implausible that in enacting IEEPA, Congress handed the president the power to overhaul the entire tariff system and the American economy in the process, allowing him to set and reset tariffs on any and every product from any and every country at any and all times. And as Justices Gorsuch and Barrett just said, this is a one-way ratchet. We will never get this power back if the government wins this case. What president wouldn't veto legislation to rein this power in and pull out the tariff power? IEEPA is a sanction statute. It's not a tax statute where Congress gave away the store. Congress knows exactly how to delegate its tariff powers every time for 238 years. It's done so explicitly, always with real limits. IEEPA looks nothing like those laws. It uses regulate, which Congress has used hundreds of times, never once to include tariffs, and it lacks the limits of every other tariff statute. And that is why, even though presidents have used IEEPA to impose economic sanctions thousands of times, no president in IEEPA's 50-year lifetime has ever tried to impose tariffs. And the president bypassed statutes that do address tariffs, like Section 122 for large and serious trade deficits, but that imposes a clear guardrail, 15% cap, 150-day limit. This is Youngstown at its lowest ebb. If the government wins, another president could declare a climate emergency and impose huge tariffs without fines or without floors or ceilings, as Justice Gorsuch said. My friend's answer, this administration would declare it a hoax. The next president may not quite say that. This is an open-ended power to junk the tariff laws and is certainly not conveyed by the word regulate. I welcome the court's questions.
So what I want to say to you guys is how brilliant Neil Kottjel is. And I want you to also understand, as complicated as you hear these oral arguments are, the briefs are even harder to read because they have to be written in such a particularized way to convey meaning in as short a space as possible, even though these are like over 100 pages or so. So, I mean, like, actually, I'm not sure how long these briefs were. I would have to go back and look. But the point is, this is dense and the writing is denser. And what I appreciate about Kottjel is, as you can see, he's utterly clear. The only thing you may have heard in here that may have been confusing to you is, what is he talking about, this Youngstown case? That's not really important for you. But if you listen to how clear he is, I mean, I truly, truly appreciate it. Now, you're going to first get some questions from right here is Clarence Thomas. I want you to hear the pushback, the kinds of questions the justices are asking him. And then I'm going to tell you, what they think his weakest argument is, but I still think he's going to win. So let's play this. I'm going to back out of the shot so you can see this better. Let's continue here.
Wouldn't your argument also apply to embargoes?
So, and this is the argument in the fine dissent below, and I think there are three answers to that, Justice Thomas. The first is revenue raising. Embargoes stop the shipment. Tariffs start the tax bill. They are first and foremost ways of regulating revenue, as some of your own opinions said.
Okay, so this is key, you guys. An embargo is when you say people, that's a sanction. Again, that's what I was talking about earlier, just stopping the shipment, stopping people importing the goods. And he's saying the primary purpose of a tariff is to tax. Now, at one point, let me see if I can get some more questions to him. Thomas is asking about delegation. Kavanaugh, I think he's going to be a dissent also because he's asking a lot. Okay, so what Kavanaugh's main point is going to be, and I'm going to tell you that now. Kavanaugh's like, how does it make sense that Congress would give the president the authority to completely stop trade, but wouldn't give the president the authority just to tax it, or impose some taxes on it. And I think the way Katyal says is that's just kind of what the statute says. Let me see if I get any questions from. Okay, Alito. Let's look at Alito because he's going to be one of the dissenters too, and you can kind of see where he's kind of coming at Neil and what Neil has to say. Okay, let's go.
I think is really difficult.
Just ask the other. Go ahead.
Justice, let's start with just the bare statutory language. You have arguments about structure. You have arguments about history. There are strong arguments, but let's just start with the bare statutory language, regulate importation. If we disregard all of the rest, would you dispute that that would include the imposition of a fee?
So if it's revenue, yeah, we do dispute that, absolutely.
What if there were a statute that said, suppose that there's a particular national park that's very crowded, and Congress passes a statute that says the National Park Service may regulate admission to the park. Would you say, well, that does not allow them to impose a fee?
So, Your Honor, sometimes we think of fees as not revenue raising, but rather capturing the cost of government services. In your example, the going to the park, that may, those kinds of cases, which I think.
Suppose it goes beyond the cost of running the park. Congress just wants to control admission to the park, regulate admission. Wouldn't that include the imposition of a fee?
So if it doesn't raise revenue, then and it's not about that, then I think that's fine. If it does,
it raises revenue. Then
I think it's a tougher
the hypothetical. That wouldn't apply.
So I think in that circumstance that it wouldn't be a regulation in context. It wouldn't be permitted. That is, at least in the context of tariffs and trade. We know, Justice Alito.
Okay, well, that gets into your other arguments. We start out with the bare statutory language, and that was what my question was about. Do you think all tariffs are revenue-raising? Suppose that instead of imposing these across-the-board tariffs, suppose that an executive order imposed a tariff.
Okay, so you're going to get a ton of hypotheticals from him trying to kind of zero in on his concerns. This is a lot of Alito here. And I think, okay, let's get to, we get Gorsuch.
Boy, they got to say so really clearly. And here, there's nothing like that in the text of AIPA.
Thank you. Justice Gorsuch?
Well, I don't know if I agree with what you say, but at any rate, back to the plain language. And just stick with me for a moment. The Constitution says that Congress gets to regulate commerce, and everybody understood that meant and included the power to tariff. Story, Madison, okay? So that's sort of a problem, right? Regulate is a capacious verb. And then you've got the otherwise language as well, which we've sort of discussed. And just on the plain language, forget about the backdrop of major. Do you need major questions to win? I kind of think you might.
No, I don't think so. If we did, I think we'd win for reasons expressed, but I don't think so at all.
So you can see, this is why I'm getting at the proposition, and I'm just going to get to the closing. I'm getting to the proposition that I know Gorsuch is a vote to overturn this, but I think, again, the conservatives want major question doctrine. Katyal is trying to get the reasoning not to be on those grounds. Let's just get now to the very end of this, where the rebuttal. I think we've got this John Sauer's rebuttal. We have someone else arguing for, I think, because there are two cases consolidated, this Benjamin Gutman. But let's go to let's go to the rebuttal by Sauer right now. And I want to see in his rebuttal whether there were any questions that were asked. Nope, they were not. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing that. I hope you got the sense of what this argument is about. Again, I would be shocked if these tariffs are upheld for the reasons I talked about. In addition, you guys, though, to I think there'll be 6 votes to strike down the tariffs. I'm not sure if they're going to agree on the reasoning. The other piece that was complicated that came up in oral argument is what do we do now with the tariffs that were already collected? You know, how are we going to calculate giving those back to the importers? And will the importers then have to renegotiate with their suppliers if the suppliers cut a break? You know, we don't fully know that. And one possibility is to make the relief prospective and not retroactive. And ultimately, that's kind of not Neil Katyal's problem at all. Now, you know, I guess that remedy is difficult to fashion, but it's not an argument for allowing something that's unlawful to exist or continue. So, my friends, it is time for Crazy Town. Yes, it is. Let's do it. Where's my crazy? Crazy Town is today Donald Trump and his crazy lies. Here we go.
Well, they talk. We made a wonderful deal for everybody. Our farmers, as you know, with the soybeans at levels that nobody's ever seen before. We were able to make phenomenal deals. If we didn't have the tariffs, we wouldn't have been able to do that. So we thought we did very well yesterday. We hope that we did.
The soybean farmers, he's claiming that somehow that there is a deal in place, but the deal in place absolutely does not get the soybean farmers back to where they were before. And even if it, my friends, even if it did, to suggest like I don't even understand how Donald Trump can suggest that that putting them in jeopardy, billions of dollars of jeopardy, and then having it removed entirely is a good thing, right? He's saying that without the tariffs, we couldn't have done this. I mean, without the tariffs, you couldn't have taken away the tariffs. That's for hell sure. But also, it's not true what he is saying. And I just want to share my screen. This is the Wall Street Journal, not exactly a bastion of Trump hating. And here's an article from yesterday, how the lowly soybean got trapped in the crossfire of the U.S.-China trade wars. Farmers from the heartland have come to depend on Chinese consumers for their livelihood. And this is a potent weapon in negotiations with the Trump administration. Now, yeah, what he says cannot be relied on. I think you know that. Well, anyway, have a lovely, lovely weekend, and I'll see you bright and early Monday morning. I want to do a shout out to our amazing mods. You know them, Deb, Jason, and AJ. We could not do this without you guys. Thank you always for being here when you can. I appreciate you.
Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub show where welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There was hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Gen Taub show.